Rabbi, one of the misconceptions about kosher in Paul's letters, to me this is very huge, because what I've learned since I've been keeping kosher for 4 years, that it's not, for me, it started out very easy. God says, this is food and this is not food. To me, that was very simple. Just like when I looked at my children, they would put things in their mouth and I would say, no, that's not food. So I got that that came to me very easy. But what I didn't expect, after keeping kosher for 4 years, that what God is allowing me to understand, that He wants a kosher mind. So yes, it's important not to put unkosher things in our mouth, but the real revelation that I got was that God is teaching me to look at everything, is this kosher or not? So explain to us from Paul's letters, how did this get so misunderstood?
Everything in life was given to us in the physical, and by practicing and rehearsing in the physical, we are able to more and more understand the spiritual. We are physical, therefore we cannot understand the spiritual that easy. So by practicing in the physical, things become more and more simple and understandable in our mind about the spiritual. We find that the clean and unclean, the English word is kosher, but it's really not kosher. The Hebrew word is kasher. Kasher means fit, F-I-T, fit. But it also means another thing. It means to connect, to tie down to something. So when you see that man and beast in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, they ate the fruit and the produce of the field. That's what man and beast have eaten. And then we see that man sinned and was kicked out of the garden. And in time, we have a very bad generation, the generation of Noah. And think about that all through that time, man was vegetarian. I've never heard of any person to tell me that they knew that. It wasn't until the end of the flood of 1 year and 10 days, when they came out of the boat, that man began to eat the meat, the flesh of animals. Now, we also know when God told Noah, I am putting an end to all life on earth. Now go and gather 7 of every clean animal, kasher, and 2 of every unclean, taref, and put them in the boat. We find that Noah was not surprised nor confused when God says, go and collect 7 of the fit, F-I-T, kasher. No, God said it. He knew exactly what it was. How did he know? Because they were vegetarians. And it was passed down from father to son. So there was no problem. But now they have come out of the boat after 1 year and 10 days. And there's nothing sown and there's nothing to eat. So they are forced to eat flesh for the period of the new grain to come out and the trees to bloom and bring forth fruit. So kasher has nothing to do with Judaism. Noah was not a Jew. Abraham was not a Jew until he has begun to search for the God, the invisible God of creation. So for that portion, there is absolutely no controversy. There should be no confusion about what Paul was talking about. He was talking about the difference between fish eaters from Galilee and meat eaters from Judea. And that's what he's saying. If your brother comes to visit you from Galilee, and they don't eat meat over there, they eat fish. So if he comes to your house and he tells you, because not all of them are offended, but if he tells you, you know what, the smell, the taste, I'm offended, be courteous. He's your guest. Don't cook, don't serve meat. What's the big deal? Paul would never talk, because if he goes by the name of rabbi, you know he's not changed his title. If he says, I'm a rabbi, that means a rabbi can only teach Torah. He cannot teach anything else.
That's incredible. The other, and you know what, with that mentioned, in my run-ins with different theologians and different pastors, a lot of pastors actually don't dispute what you just said with that, because they go outside the Bible and they do a little bit of in-depth study in what was happening in the different regions. What I find fascinating is those same men that would agree with you on this go back to somewhere in Acts, I believe it's Acts 10, I could be mistaken, but it's talking about Peter was getting ready to go to Cornelius, and he went up to pray, and he went into a trance and had a vision. And for people that study the New Testament, they're familiar with it. It's the one where the sheet comes down, and an angel of the Lord said, Peter, eat. And 3 times Peter denied, said, God, Lord, nothing has ever touched my mouth unclean. And he never ate, and the sheet came back up. Now, these same men that would agree with you on Paul's letters, they go to this, and they say that God would never use an illustration like that. And to me, I'm not a theologian. I'm just a man that decided to change his life and start to study the Bible with true change. I had no motive, Isaac. I had a motive to teach my family more holiness. And when I read that story to the end, it has nothing to do with food. It's talking about that don't call a Gentile unclean anymore. Can you add anything to that?
Okay, in the book I'm trying to break it down even to smaller bits of explanation, but the bigger picture is, why do the ministers, rabbis and such do not question what was the purpose of Peter denying it 3 times? Why is once not enough? Because of the Tanakh. The Tanakh is an abbreviation of Torah, Nevi'im, which is prophets, and Ketuvim, which is the writings. So what Peter is saying, no, I have not broken it because of the Torah, no, I have not broken it because of the prophets, and no, I have not broken your command in the writings, in all of the writings. And so at that time, the knock comes. So the knock, God has portrayed everything in such a wonderful way, in total control. And the knock did not come before the denial. It did not come after the first or the second, but he waited until the third one, and at that time, the knock comes in and wakes him up from this trance. And he says, you are Shimon or Peter, come and follow us to Kosher. It's a long walk. It's a very long walk. So he walks to Cornelius' house. At which point, if I may read here, from the book of Acts chapter 10 and verse 25, it says, as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter, lifting him up, saying, stand up, I myself am also a man. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many who had come together. The many is obviously the very family of Cornelius. Now, what was the reason that a centurion of Rome, the leaders of the whole world, would worship Peter? Is because he was so taken by the angel of God. He's thinking, he is not talking to me about the Torah. He's sending me to somebody who is much greater than the angel.
Wow.
And if I am to worship the angel, how much more will I worship this man? And Peter says, don't you dare. I am just a messenger. And so, in 27 it says, and as he talked with him, he went in and found many who had come together. Then he said to them, you know how unlawful it is for a Hebrew man to keep company with or go to one of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. Through the message of the sheet, he was not talking about people eating the unclean. It would be absurd. If God changes his mind, how can we rely and trust in a God who keeps changing his mind? Maybe he gives us a law. If we wait long enough, he'll come back and tell us on the other, so we can continue with the other. No. God says in Malachi, I am God and I change not. And so here we find it has nothing to do with food. It has to do with the Gentiles of other nations.
Amen.
In 29 he says, therefore I came without objection as soon as I was sent for. I asked then, for what reason have you sent for me? And then Cornelius goes out and tells him about his fasting, his prayers, and just like you were saying earlier, you prayed for a Hebrew rabbi, and he was praying for the Hebrew God. And it's such a wonderful love story between mankind and God.
Absolutely.